You presented your progress so far to the World Vaccine Congress this week. What is the latest update? How much progress have you made?
Well, first of all, this validation of our technology by CEPI is really wonderful. As you said, it's so enabling and in the process of the race for us. And we see it as a race against the pathogen, really not other companies. We know that there have to be several vaccines that are licensed here. So we are racing against the virus, and this is very enabling for us. And we're doing multiple things in parallel. One of the most important things that CEPI will do for us is allow us to get into the manufacturing in a big, big way. So, we want to deliver millions of doses. And in fact, I think we could deliver 100 million doses by the end of the year, more than 1 billion doses next year. And that's what's needed. And so that's what's so great with CEPI. They enabled us financially to acquire and get into contracts with very large manufacturing. So that's good. That's important. A lot of doses needed. We can now make a lot of doses.
Now, you've worked on vaccines for 3 decades, so you know the reality of how long this can take. How long before a vaccine is broadly available in the United States and then globally? Is it the fall? Is it the end of the year? Is it the spring or longer?
It keeps, I gotta say, it keeps looking like it's accelerating. You're right. It usually takes a decade. We were hoping, in this case, maybe 18 months. But the signs I'm seeing from the funders, from the regulators, is that and policymakers, is they're looking for something much sooner if it's possible. So right now, I think it is possible that these vaccines could be deployed before the end of the year. That's going to depend a lot on the FDA, the data we have. What I think what we brought to the table is a mature technology. It's not licensed, but there's a lot of experience with this in humans. There's a lot of experience with manufacturing it. So we know its safety profile pretty well. We are confident about the data we have that I updated this week that will predict the human trial outcomes. And so, we need to generate enough data to be assuring, but this is such a big problem that you kind of do the calculation, the risk benefit. I think on the whole, it's possible to imagine deploying these vaccines, ours and several others, by the end of the year, and that would be revolutionary. So it's so important. We would not want to compromise on safety. We are giving the vaccine to healthy people. But the outcome of COVID is so bad, not just the mortality and the hospitalization, but just the suffering. When the patient, my daughter works in a hospital. She's a labor and delivery nurse, but got called into the main ward, and it just made me weep to hear about the how people are suffering. They're alone, they're dying, right. They're trying to breathe. So there's that benefit to prevent that. I think will drive a lot of the decisions made to accelerate it. So I'm optimistic that it could be this year.
Now, there's so much demand. Who does Novavax expect to get treated with this vaccine first?
So, we're trying to be global. CEPI has a global view, and we have, the same view. The U.S. is obviously very important to us. In the U.S., I think what will happen is they'll roll it out to the people who are at the front lines, the first responders, the nurses. They're the ones that really need to be protected. And then after that, it's going to be the at-risk population. It's pretty clearly defined. The people that have comorbidities, that is, lung disease, heart disease, diabetes, they are the ones that are having really bad outcomes for the most part. About 85%. If you look at the age groups, very little in pediatrics, 18 to 40, less, as you go up in age, there's more and more cases of COVID hospitalizations. But in each one of those subgroups, the people with comorbidities, they're the ones that suffer. So that'd be the population you would target as, and then, the general population. So rolling that out is a big deal. Good.
The CEO of the French pharmaceutical company Sanofi told Bloomberg earlier this week that if they developed a vaccine, the U.S. would get it first because the U.S. funded their research first. This set off a global firestorm, and now you've got global leaders signing this open letter calling for a people's vaccine. Who owns the rights to a vaccine? And should free market dynamics guide the distribution or not?
This is probably not my full expertise, but it is an interface between public-private, needs, and so it's a long history. I don't see that there's going to be a giant conflict. There's been a long history of vaccine makers interacting in the U.S. with public health authorities that, in the case of flu, they fund, they recommend, the CDC evaluates that, and the companies distribute it. So what might be different here is to employ mass vaccination. So it's not a new thing for companies to cooperate with governments. Our goal is to have manufacturing. So we have a technology that can be transferred. It doesn't take anything away from what you can do in the U.S. to send we have a clone. We can be sent to Europe, for example, and so we have plans to have European, Asian, and U.S. manufacturer. And, in each setting, that vaccine can supply, sufficient doses for that population. So I think we want to cooperate with the U.S. government with their needs. They have a number of irons in the fire, if you will. And so we'd like to be part of that solution. I'm not sure, there'll be a conflict. One part of the, value of working with CEPI is they have a global access outlook, and so we very much want to do that. So we can essentially light many campfires. Many people can warm their hands around the world by spreading out the manufacturing. So one reason we got funded is we have a very high yield process, so we can make a lot of doses quickly, and that's our goal. So we want to be part of the U.S. solution, part of the global solution.
Now, I hear your optimism, and obviously you're on the front lines and you know so much more about this than the rest of us. But if history gives us any indication, the fastest a vaccine has ever been developed is 4 years. Scientists have been trying to come up with an HIV vaccine for decades, and it hasn't happened. Of course, this disease is very different, but what are the chances that we can't develop a vaccine in the near term or even in the next few years? Is there a risk of that? Because there's so much we don't know about this disease.
Look, it's a respiratory virus. We know a lot about how it infects people. We know, in other settings with other viruses, how to make a good vaccine. So I just think we're going to tap into a long history of being able to make a good respiratory vaccine. What's been absent, frankly, is funding and the will to get there with a novel respiratory vaccine. So I think all the learnings about some of the related pathogens like MERS and SARS, influenza, there's other viruses like respiratory syncytial virus. We know that there are products that are immunologically based, immunization or monoclonal antibodies that can block these infections. So we know the mechanism by which this infects. There's every reason to think that science, that clinical experience, that's going to be applicable here. I think we have a very, very good chance of having a vaccine that will be highly protective.
Now, there's a lot of competition here. You've got Moderna getting ready to go into phase 2 of their clinical trial. What are the biggest challenges you see over the next few months getting to where you want to go, and the possible bottlenecks that could slow this down?
Yeah, well, that's really, so for us, execution on a clinical trial, so we're enrolling in our clinical trial now. We have, we map out all the steps that have to be taken. It'll be an assessment of the immune response, providing that information to the FDA and other regulators, and starting up a trial. So that's a well-trodden pathway for us execution-wise. The other thing we're working on is, so to our earlier discussion, we need to scale this up. So, we're working on that in many places in parallel to get the facilities to make a lot of doses of vaccine. So, look, anything can go wrong on that pathway. So far, it's been, smooth. But I expect that to continue. This is the territory we know really well. We're a mature technology. We just unblinded a pivotal phase 3 better flu vaccine, I call it, novel flu vaccine in March. We just, so it's closely related. It's a respiratory virus. It's a nanoparticle like what we make, and so the formulation is very similar. So I just think it's execution time. And what's so big about this week for us is we needed the funds, and these are really enabling funding events that we have. So we now have the people, the facilities. We can tackle this problem. We're so grateful for the funding to do that now.